And we are now live.
All right, good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. This is the Mayor's Climate Commission for Sacramento and West Sac. I'm Ann Stousfall, chair of the commission. We'll start with the roll call, and then Julia Kim from the Local Government Commission will, she's our webinar host. She'll go over the logistics for the call, and then I'll make some opening remarks. So Julia, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Stousfall. When you hear a name called, please unmute yourself and make note of your presence, and we'll go in alphabetical order by last name. We have Arnold.
I'm here.
Ayala.
Here.
Blackwood.
Here.
Here.
Corliss.
Here.
Ledesma.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Littman.
Here.
Mohana.
Here.
Nelson.
Present.
Nelson.
Hanson. Here.
Ah, excellent. Yes, and Hanson.
Here.
Orchard.
Here.
Pope Hardin.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Tanner.
Here.
Teal.
Here.
Wick.
Here.
Weezer.
Here.
And Chair Stousfall.
Oh, here, thank you.
It looks like we have full attendance from the full commission. And
Great.
I'll briefly just run through some logistics for our participants. In terms of submitting public comments, if you visit our webpage at lgc.org/climate commission, on the homepage you'll see an option to submit public comment. We are actually launching a new public poll for this meeting, so I'll touch on that in just a moment. Commissioners have been able to access all comments being submitted in real time, and the website is fully up to date with all of the letters and the public comments that we received over email, and as well as through the public comment form. And you can see the comments that we've received under the meeting materials tab on the commission's homepage, and by clicking that button there. And all comments that we've received up to 3 p.m. today have been posted. And as I briefly noted, we are launching a new public poll. We know that it can be challenging in a virtual setting to open up opportunities for engagement. So we're launching a poll where you're able to express support for or opposition to the adoption of the Commission's final report. This is linked on the Commission webpage, but I'll also follow up in just a moment with a link. And those are the logistics to cover, and I'll turn it back to you, Chair Stousfall.
Great, thank you, Julia. So welcome, commissioners, and thank you all for being here. And thank you also to all the members of the public who've joined. We had about 165 registered to participate, which is fantastic. And Mayors Steinberg and Cabaldon, we're honored to have you join us today on this last meeting. And I'll turn it over to you shortly so that you can give us some inspiration. This is the Commission's last meeting. We've had 9 meetings, 18 months of hard work, not just by the commissioners, but by the dozens of technical experts, our equity advisory group, and our finance working group, as well as LGC and all the many hundreds of stakeholders who attended our meetings and provided comment along the way. So today is an exciting time to bring all that to culmination. Our main task this evening is to do a final review of our report and the recommendations therein, and to vote on it. And I want to thank all of those who provided public comment. As all the commissioners have hopefully had a chance to look at it, we have gotten hundreds of public comments over the last couple of weeks, all of them thoughtful, and the overwhelming majority of them in support of the recommendations and especially in support of the equity framework. I feel like one of the great outcomes of this commission has been the tremendous outpouring of public interest and support from the community for working on climate at the local and regional levels. So after we vote on the report, we'll look ahead to next steps. Our recommendations are an important first step, but as we know, and our residents keep reminding us, the real work is in implementation. So we're delighted to have Mayors Cabaldon and Steinberg here with us tonight. Thank you both for your leadership in launching the commission and your commitment to addressing climate. Both the mayors are going to make some remarks, and we'll start with Mayor Cabaldon.
All right, well, thank you. Thanks to all the commissioners, and thank you, Chair Stossel, for your deft leadership on this project. You keep saying 18 months, but I feel like we launched 2 years ago. Maybe it's just 10 years of work that's been done in the last 18 months. And over that period, the challenge that we're facing has become even more urgent. And the depths of our deficit in terms of meeting the climate challenge even more profound. But during that period also, I think what we have seen through your work is all of the cavalries, the industries that are out there ready to help, ready to work, ready to lead, ready to push, ready to control, and then ready to change through all of the outreach, the engagement, the advice from so many, not just technical experts, although them too, but also the ideas of folks of all ages, from all backgrounds throughout the community. I'm reminded of the launch at Sac State and all the students that participated and offered new insights and lenses on many of the issues. In some sense, foretelling some of our learnings, even from these last several months, around how to employ a lens of equity on issues like climate, and calling us to task when we didn't. The even younger students out at River City High School and elsewhere in the region who participated in this process as well, that you as a commission brought your expertise, your hard work, your agencies, your resources to the challenge, but allowed the next generation or the current generation to step forward and to lead on the imperative. And so thank you for that show of what leadership really is, and then for taking it seriously and authentically and with fidelity to that spirit of engaging the entire community. Now, so much of what we're talking about in this sphere is around evolving our behaviors, both as institutions and as individuals. And for those that may have doubted a few months ago that this was possible, that we could reach the kinds of dramatic changes in our own daily and institutional behaviors that would allow us to meet the challenge of climate change. One of the consequences of the COVID emergency is it has should give us some resolve about what we're capable of. That when called to task, even when things get tough or tougher, that we are capable of dramatic changes in the way that we go about our lives in order to protect ourselves, protect our community, and in this case, protect the planet. And so what might have seemed pie in the sky when you started talking about some of these recommendations, I think what we're learning from this year in particular is that if the imperative is strong enough that we can, and the people and institutions will act and will respond, and that our solidarity around a common purpose is what is essential, and that we can muster and marshal that. And no more so than on the issue of equity and diversity and inclusion and justice. That the events, the learnings, the revelations, and the focus of all parts of the public in recent weeks and months on those dimensions, not just of this problem, but of everything that is challenged and that is the shame of our society, have been brought to bear. You anticipated much of that in the work that's been done, and the revisions to the report, the draft that have occurred, have reflected that. But they also reflect the surprising and powerful courage of our residents and so many of our small businesses and our nonprofit organizations and others in this region who have sometimes literally out on the streets put themselves in danger in order to advance not just their vision, but their commitment to real action and to real change on their own behalf and on behalf of others and on behalf of the community, and in our case, on behalf of the planet. And so, yeah, it's been a challenging 2020 and a challenging 18 months in many, many ways. But those challenges ought to be sources of hope and inspiration for us as we move forward with the recommendations that you're considering today, and then towards the moment of implementation. I also want to say thank you to the staff team from both cities, and certainly from local government commission, and all of the folks who participate on the technical advisory committees, to the members of the public who have engaged, to those who have called us to account, to the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of communications I've received just in the last few hours, probably, of your deliberations. This is an issue to which we've brought our best, not our best people, our best selves, and our best vision about what we are capable as a community. It's been a challenge at times, but I also take that as a very strong signal. In these last few days, all the debates and the battles and the fights that I've seen, and the contrary emails and the graphs and the pro formas and the charts and everything else, that may have, I know many of you have been caught up in those battles, but take this as a strong signal that your work matters, that people are taking it seriously already, that they know that a set of recommendations of this scale and scope, of this ambition, by a group of people, of leaders in our region like you, speaking on behalf of the hundreds and hundreds of people that participate in this process, has power. And the moment for that power is today. It has been hard because it matters. It is bold because we have no other choice. But in that lack of other choice, we have so many opportunities to make right and just what we have failed to do for generations, to make our community safer and cleaner and healthier, and to create a new economy and a new set of opportunities that will include all. So I want to thank you, and thanks to Mayor Steinberg. This has been a joint effort by both of our cities, but as is often the case, it is Mayor Steinberg who was the instigator, the initiator, and the leader of this work, and we would not be here if it weren't for his clear vision around the emergency and around the need for action and around the potential for regional collaborations like this one. So thank you, Chair. Thank you to all the members of the Commission. Very, very much appreciated your work to this point, and we look forward to the next steps.
Great, thanks, Mayor Cabaldon. I'll always remember at our first meeting when you told us that working on climate is a joyful thing to do. Thank you so much for your leadership and your wise words. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mayor Steinberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I will associate myself with the remarks of the gentleman from West Sacramento, Mayor Cabaldon. Very well said, and I agree with everything. You know, when you're in elective office and you have an idea to put together a commission on an important and vital subject of public interest, there are two things that can happen. One is that it can be laborious and uninspiring, and ultimately people forget the work. The other outcome is that appointing a resident-led commission of leaders who are passionate can result in real and sustained change. And I'm thrilled by the fact that this commission, the Climate Commission, represents the latter model in the most meaningful ways. I want to thank all of you for spending so much time when you are all such busy professionals in your various lines of work, for devoting so much time and energy and thought to this endeavor. I want to thank the chair, Ann Stausball, especially for leading in such a tremendous way and putting in literally thousands of hours to ensure that the recommendations that you are taking up today are not for a dusty shelf, but instead are for real action and real change. Thank you to the LGC, to Kate. Thank you to all of our staffs. Thank you to Julia Burrows of my staff specifically for all of your work. You know, I really, again, agree with what Mayor Cabaldon said. The end product here, which I know you're going to deliberate over the next several hours, is really important. but maybe just as important is the process that led to the recommendations. And not just from the commissioners, but I know that we are receiving, as you are receiving, hundreds of letters from people. And it speaks to both the importance of climate, obviously, but it also speaks to the way that you have, over the course of the last year plus, captivated the Sacramento and West Sacramento public, at least its major stakeholders, to take the issues seriously. Because it would be, frankly, so easy, especially in the midst of crises, and Lord knows 2020 has been a year of crises, to say, you know what, we'll put this aside now until we're able to get through what we're dealing with. And instead, you have maintained the importance of climate front and center because, you know, we've learned a lot from these past months. And yes, COVID is the pandemic, but climate is not just an environmental issue, it is a public health issue. And your recommendations treat it that way. And I'm very proud. You've gone even beyond your original charge in the way that you have looked with even greater breadth at the issues of inclusion and equity and public health. It's now our job, depending upon what you do today, but I know you will come forward with some very strong and I hope consensus-based recommendations. It will be our job to make sure that we translate your recommendations into policy that carries us not just for the next years in Sacramento and in West Sacramento, but frankly, for decades. I look forward, and I want to make the public commitment here today to supporting the Environmental Justice Governance Board, which will be community-led, not a government commission, but community-led, but where we can support grant-wise or financially or otherwise. I intend to do just that. I also want to thank you for not shying away from controversy. Because I think in this world in which we live in, where sometimes controversy is unfairly equated with incivility or divisiveness, that we forget that controversy is actually a really good thing, because it forces us to stretch, to think, to act differently. And if this was easy, and if, you know, your discussion on electrification, all the other things were an easy thing to land, I would think maybe we weren't trying hard enough. And that the disagreement, especially when it results in an ultimate common direction, is really a good, a great, and a healthy thing. And so to the commission, I know that today may be the formal end of your work, but it's certainly not nearly the end of your work, because we are all going to count on you to continue to be leaders in this worldwide battle to save the earth, because that's really what it's about. And to do so in a way that is aggressive, creative, but also allows us to create new economies, new jobs, new industries, new ways for people to live their lives in better and healthier ways. And so today is not the end. It just marks a significant part of your journey and our journey as cities, ultimately spread out to our region, that I hope will show Sacramento and West Sacramento leading where we must lead. Thank you so much. I really, I'm thrilled with where this has gone and how it is elevated in most significant ways. Good luck today, and thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Steinberg. Thank you to both the mayors for being here tonight, for your leadership, for having the foresight and initiative to launch this initiative. It's been hard work, but I think we're passing the baton now. And I know I speak for everyone on the commission that we will be here to support both the mayors in both the cities as you move forward with the tough decisions and the implementation. We all know that these are ambitious recommendations, but they're achievable and they're necessary, and they are our moral responsibility. So thank you, and we'll look forward to submitting a report to you in the near future.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, our next order of business, commissioners, is the review and adoption of the report. I'm really proud of the report and the recommendations in it, not only our policy recommendations, but of the equity framework that we worked so hard on, and on the foundational or governing principles. Kate is going to provide a brief presentation of the final report, because I think basically we all know what's in there, but she'll go over an outline of it and the changes that have been made since the last meeting. And then she'll also provide a summary of the public comment that we've received. So unless there are any questions on how we're going to proceed, I will turn it over to Kate.
Thanks, Anna. You can go to the next slide, Julia. So just to reiterate what Anne said, this has been a really robust process. It does feel like it's been 2 years to me as well, but apparently it's just been 18 months. It turned out to be a much longer and more engaging process than we anticipated, which is actually quite remarkable, because the commissioners, you all stepped up in a really powerful way and were clearly very committed to this effort. So the way the process worked, we identified 3 main areas, 3 main sectors: the built environment and mobility, because they're the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions, and then also community health and resiliency, recognizing that that would be critical to everything that we did. So we had TACs that met 3 to 5 times over 18 months to develop a list of recommendations that went to the commission. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who served on those TACs. People spent a substantial amount of time on those recommendations and provided their expertise and their knowledge, and have stuck with us throughout this process. So we're really blessed to have had all their engagement. We also had 2 TACs focused on funding and finance, and then critically 1 focused on equity, and folks that from both the commission and from the public who engaged in that, I want to give a special shout out, because that was a critical part of how we ended up where we're at, and really recognizing that equity, as you can see in this graphic here, really needed to be the container through which we looked at everything else. If you want to move to the next slide, Julia. So in addition to really this foundation in equity, we came up with another 5 foundational principles that would guide our work. And I think you'll see, for those of you who've already had a chance to, which I know many of you have, review the public comments, you'll see that a lot of these themes came up. So the theme around urgency, we heard that over and over again. The themes around being accountable to these actions, and also being really cognizant of the economy we're in, the recession we're in, and how we really need to ensure that these strategies support both an environmental lens, but also are equitable for our community and support a strong and robust economic recovery as well. Can move on to the next one. So the changes to the report were all tracked in the report, so hopefully you guys are all well aware of those changes, but I just wanted to highlight a few of the key areas. We strengthened the language around the need to align economic recovery with climate resilience outcomes. We had a really robust and enlightening conversation about that at our last meeting with a presentation from Erica Bjork with the Chamber. And so we wanted to make sure that the full spectrum of that conversation was truly reflected in the report. So I think you'll see a much more substantial much more substantial addressing of that issue that we added in the business engagement piece. We also added some lessons we're learning about COVID. We were in a very different context when we started this process, and we've learned a lot. And we've learned that, you know, what we would have thought would take 2 years to do, such as transitioning all your employees to telecommuting, happened in a matter of days. And so there are things that we can learn from that. And I know SMUD and Sac State and a number of others are doing that and continuing to take the lessons that they've learned. So we see a lot of positive value in that. We also changed the supplemental report to be titled Technical Report to reflect the substantial amount of work and the expertise that went into those recommendations. We acknowledge the unique challenge West Sacramento faces as well related to the electrification strategy. So we do have 2 different electric utilities. Sacramento is under SMUD and West Sacramento is under PG&E, and PG&E doesn't have the same symmetry related to rebates, and there's a higher risk related to the power shutoffs and also, you know, the higher rates as well. So we did in a number of areas in the main report address that unique challenge that is not symmetrical across the 2 cities. Finally, we acknowledge that while we made a number of recommendations, including the year 1 recommendations, the CAP process and the climate action plan process in both of the cities are being updated, right? The climate action plans are being updated, and there are different points in their process. And we wanted to make it clear that there's no need to wait on implementing these strategies. And also, the commission wanted to be really mindful that for those year 1 projects that are implemented, that those should be prioritized with a lens towards the projects that are most cost effective given the recession that we're in. So with that, we can move on to public comments. And I would just remind commissioners that you have received the summary that I'm going to share, and that you also have a real-time update that is available through the link we sent you earlier today, so you can see any of the comments that have come in during this meeting or will continue to come in. So can you take it to the next slide, Julia? So these are the organizations that we have received support letters from. So we've gotten 138 comments in support and 33 letters of support. So what you see on this slide is not the individuals, but the organizations that supported or the individuals that were associated with organizations listed here. Some of the themes that came out of this was around the urgency of addressing climate change. We had a number of asks to push earlier to 2030 and the need for early investments to avoid the higher costs of managing stranded assets and climate-induced disasters in the future. We had a lot of attention both on the support and opposed side around building electrification for new development. So on the support side, a lot of letters encouraging us to be strong on climate and see it as a climate justice issue. We also heard a number of comments around the need to look at economic recovery and COVID recovery through a climate lens and seeing that as an opportunity to rebuild better and to support a just green transition. On the opposed side, we had 109 comments.
I found this on the web.
Oh, okay. 109 comments come in and 5 letters of opposition. And those were all around the electrification strategy, particularly the building new electrification, the second strategy. A number of those comments, 104 of the 109 comments, related to asking for a disclosure statement in the report, recognizing that propane wasn't included as a part of the analysis for the report. The other 4 comments and 3 letters expressed opposition on the electrification strategy, pointing to issues around consumer choice, the impact of electrification to various industries, and some of the questions around reliability, resilience, and higher costs. So I know we'll probably get into those conversations a little more, but that was really the key pieces that we heard in the public comments. Next slide, Julia. So just as a reminder, you are able to still make comments using the link here, and commissioners are receiving those comments in real time and are able to track those. So that's it for me, and I'll turn it back over to you, Anne.
Great, thank you so much, Kate. You know, in addition to the amazing work you guys did in writing the report, the graphics are so beautiful, so thank you for that. Commissioners, it's my understanding that there are a couple of commissioners that would like to propose some revisions to the report. And so I would like to take those separately, those matters separately. And if there are motions on them, we can vote on those, and then we can move to voting on the report as a whole. So unless anyone objects, and I can't see you all right now, so raise your hand if you do, that's how we'll proceed. Okay. Commissioner Mohana, would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you, Anne. So I would really like to separate one of the items that I think has seen a lot of controversy, as you noted, Kate, and several of the opposition letters as well, surrounding the built environment recommendation number 2 on the 100% electrification. I think it's really important, you know, as our mayors discussed, when we get to implementation, that we can actually implement what we are putting forward, and really encouraging the vision of the commission from the very onset to be implementable. So, you know, I think we have to remember the conversations that we had at the beginning of the commission and the presentations that we saw from the other cities regarding being mindful of any ordinance that we place that might counteract another element of reducing GHG emissions. As we all know, there's so many moving parts to the effort to combat climate change, and we have to ensure that when we impose one ordinance on electrification, we're not negating another major vision that we have set forth in our report. The big vision of enabling our communities to be able to lead the sustainable livelihoods that we all want to see. So, you know, I truly believe that the way that the people live within buildings that we create is just as, if not more important than the building materials and functionality themselves. And we need to encourage people to live closer to their employment centers, allowing for the car-free lifestyles that we want to see and the housing affordability that is necessary to enhance those lifestyles. As we all know, Sacramento is in a very critical moment. We're facing a severe housing shortage that is very real and ties directly into the equity discussions that we've been having. We need to ensure that we can continue to build the attainable and sustainable housing in the right locations. You know, we all know that over 50% of our GHG emissions come from transportation alone. And we should not do anything that would increase that percentage by any means. So, you know, the way that the original recommendation has been written focuses on the 20% of our emissions related to building operations and materials. But I believe that the way it's written could unfortunately increase the larger 50% amount that's related to transportation if we are unable to build the higher density projects in our urban cores that reduce the need for transportation and reduce the commute times. So, you know, it's evident through a lot of the conversations that we've had with the building industry, with my fellow urban infill developers that care about bringing urban sustainability to Sacramento, that we are not yet in a place where we can build all electric, higher density projects, especially high rises without subsidized incentives. And we don't have the examples yet of the mid-rises and high-rises that we have accomplished all electric in our region. We have numerous challenges from technologies that are available to us on water heating, transformer sizing issues, on tight footprints in the urban core, and electrical capacity that we face on a daily basis. And urban infill, which is exactly what the vision of this commission is to incentivize, is the most challenging form of development already. But yet it is the most necessary piece of the puzzle when it comes to combating climate change. So we need to ensure that we're encouraging that high density housing in the right locations near employment centers, and its encouragement should run in parallel with this electrification goal that we have put forward. So, I really believe that as we continue with the partnerships that are necessary to get to that 100% electrification and the technological advancements that we're going to be seeing over the next several years, I'd really like to propose a phased approach that will allow us to strengthen those partnerships and increase our technological improvements so that we get to a place where we bring that cost efficiency that really incentivizes that higher density usage, that encourages our vision of bringing urban sustainability and changing and transforming the way that people live. So I've sent that proposed revision language to LGC in consideration of all the challenges that we face on our higher density projects. Kate, would you be able to place that language on the screen, or would you like me to read that out?
Yeah, Julia Kim can put it up. And Nikki, if you could walk us through your motion, that would be great.
Sure. So, we, as I indicated, the technology is not yet there and we have not yet seen it, but I know that the partnerships that we're going to create are going to allow us to get to the place where we need to be. So what I really would like to propose is this phased approach where we mandate all electric construction to eliminate fossil fuel use in low-rise buildings by 2023, low-rise being defined as under 4 stories, and all other buildings by 2026. Provided that the costs to go electric are cost-effective, including the incremental costs of the electrical infrastructure upgrades that are necessary, and the technology has shown to be feasible. So I'd like to ask that we make this motion to revise to ensure that the vision of the commission is intact and that we ensure that we are able to create the urban sustainability that we want to see for our future.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Mohana. So the motion is to replace the existing built environment strategy number 2 with the language that's up on the screen. Is there a second to the motion?
Second that motion.
Is that Dave Tanner?
Yes.
Okay, second by Commissioner Tanner. Okay, so let's have some discussion on the motion. And you can raise your hands if you wish to speak.
Yeah, this is Arlen. I've raised my hand. I don't know if anyone can see it. But...
Sorry, I'm struggling with my 2 screens here. I see it now. Okay, well, I have Commissioner Orchard, then Ayala, then Lippman.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. As my fellow commissioners know, I've been a very strong proponent of the building electrification language in the report, but I am supportive of the amendment. I think for me it is incredibly important that this commission have forward momentum in the goals that we're setting around electrification. I do think that for our region, and especially in the downtown area, that this is an emerging infrastructure or an emerging technology. It is the challenges for the higher rise multifamily and commercial buildings. Really, the biggest issue is the issue of electric hot water heating. There are not any examples within our urban core at this point. There is one on the books that is expected to be built, which I think will help prove out the technology with regard to the other infill developers in the area. I think it will also help resolve some of the concerns, but it isn't there yet. The technology is relatively new over the last several years, and while there have been projects built in other places, there are not. It is true that it does include some additional space challenges for infill development. And it is true that right now it is not cost competitive with the traditional gas fired. Now, with that said, SMUD does have substantial investments to support these all electric buildings, and we are applying those wherever we can in the region, and continue to believe that this technology will prove out over the next few years. So I am supportive of this. I know Commissioner Mohana and I had several conversations regarding this and some back and forth on this, and I really appreciate her willingness and the willingness of other commissioners to compromise on this. So I think this is a good middle ground, and so I am prepared to vote yes on this.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Ayala.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you both Nikki and Arlen for their perspectives. I am prepared to also support the recommendation from Commissioner Mohana. I have full trust and confidence in her abilities, along with Arlen, to know what is best and what makes sense. But I feel also compelled to make a statement for public health, because as we move ahead and implement the revised commitment, I think it's also important for us to not forget why it's important to get to full electrification as soon as possible. The commissioners may recall that in the report that we are going to vote on, there is a reference to a very important study by E3 that points to the significant emissions that come from use of natural gas in the built environment. In addition to that, and since that report was published, we are aware of 2 additional studies that point to the relevance of gas use in the built environment in terms of indoor air pollution as well as outdoor air pollution. One of those studies first came from our friends at the Rocky Mountain Institute, and they may actually be participating today, and we certainly thank them for that. They've done a very detailed analysis in terms of the impact of the emissions associated with cooking and other activities in the indoor environment. And just more recently, the School of Public Health down at UCLA published the latest assessment of what the true impact of our continuing use of natural gas in the built environment is. There is a real impact, and it's only going to get bigger because as other sources get cleaner, the relative contribution of the built environment emissions to both air pollution conventionally as well as greenhouse gases is going to increase unless we take action such as what we are considering today. So thank you for letting me take the floor, Madam Chair. Like I said, I am prepared to vote in support of Commissioner Mohana's revision, but I felt that I needed to share these perspectives with my fellow commissioners as well. Thank you.
Okay, very good, thank you. Commissioner Littman.
I want to say that, first of all, I'm disappointed in having to push back this date, but after talking with Nikki and other people, I recognize that there are some technological and infrastructure limitations that make this a reasonable thing to do. And I appreciate separating out the low rise from the high rise. Low rise buildings, we could speed that up to 2021. And the main point I want to make is that we are in a climate emergency. So the steps that the recommendations that we've made, we're going to find lots of challenges. We're going to find a lot of things that we haven't thought of, unexpected consequences. We can't let that stop us. We've got to solve those things. So I'm comfortable with voting for this, waiting until 2026, if between now and 2026, the cities and the utilities put all their effort into fixing that infrastructure and technology issues so that we can move forward quickly when it's time. And if those problems are solved before 2026, then I think we need to jump in and pass those ordinances earlier. So everything that I am suggesting is that we speed up everything we can, solve the problems as we go along, and continue to recognize that we're in a major emergency and we only have 10 years to make these drastic changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson, then Commissioners Wick, Arnold, and Weiser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, it's exciting that we finally come to the conclusion of our work here. And I know originally most of us signed up for 4 meetings, but it has been a joy to work on this and to watch people from a lot of different perspectives come together. I've enjoyed seeing the work of you, Madam Chair, and Kate through the LGC team shepherd us, sometimes with a little prodding, but usually we want to work together. On this particular issue, I think that there's been a lot of debate behind the scenes. There's certainly been a lot of public comment. Many of us have received probably the volume of emails that I get on a daily basis about this issue, but on a daily basis about many issues. So you get a little taste for what it's like to be in the fray. And I think the way that this is approached through working together, and I heard a lot of people saying they talk to one another. Lori mentioned it, Arlen mentioned it. And I think that's how we're gonna solve some of these bigger issues, is through talking, through working, through finding realistic solutions that move the ball forward. And while I know that this motion will disappoint some people, I think it's an honest and eager and earnest way to move the ball forward. And so, Alberto, I heard your comments, but I also know that as we looked at the emissions, the transportation sector, as it was mentioned earlier, was one of the largest. We've never really done a deep dive at this particular commission on the cost of building housing, particularly infill housing, transit-oriented development, things that meet all the goals we'd want. But it's incredibly, incredibly expensive for a variety of reasons beyond the purview of this commission, but including some of the state climate change mandates that require those buildings to meet very stringent energy efficiency standards. I also am very conscientious that of all of our infill developers, Nikki Mahana, and thank you, Nikki, has been one of the most ambitious and willing to push the envelope of what's possible. And Nikki, you deserve great credit for 19J as a signature and singular project that is working towards balancing density with quality of life and meeting many of the goals that we have here. But it's not lost on me, and Arlen and I have worked along with his board and organization for the better part of a decade to make that infill housing possible. But many of our systems, our older infrastructure, it's not ready for the load necessary to do this. And so what I hear Lori saying, and Lori, excuse me if I get this wrong, but I sort of hear it as a call to action, not just for the cities, but for SMUD, PG&E, the Air Quality Management District, the other entities that are part of this commission, and indeed probably our state and federal officials, to help us invest in decarbonization. And so while the Air District runs programs to decarbonize the transportation systems and reduce other types of sources, I really think we need a source of funding to invest in structures like the ones that are above 3 stories that we're talking about. It is going to require significant investment in infrastructure. When I first joined the council, we had a water pipe and sewer replacement program that was so underfunded that pipes were being replaced on average every 400 years based on the funding, when their useful life was 100 years. And so we had to very much change the rate structures to support innovation, investment. Came with water meters, it came with a lot of other things. and also do a very significant amount of bonding in the water fund to fix that infrastructure. And I think our electrical infrastructure, and Arlen is probably the most sophisticated on this point, is well aware of the challenges of our grid, and not just on the grid, but across the whole city, county, and given PG&E's standing in about to come out of bankruptcy maybe, I think this is even more of a challenge in West Sacramento, but I'll leave that to my colleague Chris and others to talk about. But I do think this is a reasonable solution. As it's handed off to the two city councils to debate, I think it's important that the other entities that are on this board, government entities, also take up the work with us, and that the commissioners here join us in our efforts to pass aggressive, implementable strategies to decarbonize our buildings. Implementing this, and Lori said it well, if we have the technology sooner, we should accelerate the date, but there's a lot of work to be done between now and then. So I am willing to support it. I think it's a demonstration of our community's effort to collaborate, but I also think that there are going to be some people who are greatly disappointed that this is not a standard to be implemented tomorrow, but it is ultimately a standard that I think we can show significant progress around. So thank you to the commissioners for the hard work. Thank you to our staff and to the board members and everyone else who helped pull this together.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Wick, and then Commissioner Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. So I have been struggling with this proposed amendment through the weekend and most of today. I think my biggest concern is that what's to say that we, let's think, get to 2026, what's to prevent someone from saying, we're still not there yet. We're still not ready to go all electric. And so what I'm trying to hear, and I know that many of you have worked hard to address this, but what I'm still struggling to be convinced of is number one, is the will there by the parties that have control over this to make sure that we're ready by 2026, and what is to prevent, what if we get to 2026 and what is going to be put in place to prevent someone from saying actually we're not there yet. I would really like to hear a little bit more about how we're going to get there, to hear a commitment that yes, we really will get there by 2026, because I don't want to keep kicking that can down the road again.
I'd like to address that, Commissioner Wick. So, there's been a lot of conversations between ourselves, the city, and SMUD over the past several years. As Steve mentioned, there's been a lot of conversations regarding how we can get to the place that we need to be. And I think it's really important that through this phased process, that we show models of projects that can get done, that are all electric, that enable us to implement a real ordinance that can actually be feasible. And so I share your concerns, but I believe that through what I've seen with SMUD's partnerships, that we can get there. As Arlen mentioned, there are a few projects in the pipeline, some mid-rises that are attempting to go all electric. And I think that as we see that over the next couple of years, it'll give our industry an example of what we can achieve. And we really need those models. I think the challenge really is that we haven't seen any of those models for higher density uses. So it's very challenging to put in an ordinance if we've never had one model that we can present that's been successful. So I think that there's a lot of pressure considering that, this is being proposed. I feel like, we have very ambitious timelines here that we need to reach. And considering all of the work that SMUD has done in the past few years on every project that, we've faced on a daily basis, we have these discussions, and it's an ongoing effort and evolution to get to the place where we need to be, but we know what our challenges are. That's been made very clear. We know what we need to overcome. And I think that with that knowledge, we have the next year or 2 years to really come up with the solutions that we need to see. And I'm going to be actively involved. I can commit to that. as someone who really wants to see all electric buildings get built, that wants to see that urban sustainability, I'm personally committed to ensuring that those conversations continue. But it is going to be a challenge, and it does take a significant partnership effort between all of our entities, including our city and our utility providers, to get to that place. But I know that the efforts have been made, and the projects that we've seen get built just in the past year, these are projects that have attempted to go all electric, but yet still face some of those small challenges that I think we need to overcome. So I can personally commit to you that myself and several of our colleagues in the urban infill environment are committed to getting this done.
Could I also just echo, this is Arlen, I'll just also echo Nikki's comments on this. As the board knows, SMUD has made a deep commitment to decarbonizing the built environment. All in all, we've committed $7 billion towards decarbonization over the last 20 years, and $2 billion of that is focused on both the built and transportation environments. With regard to all electric construction, we're working with, I don't think there's a developer in the region, whether it is a suburban developer or an infill developer, that we aren't working very closely with to speed up the implementation and adoption of all electric. In the low rise and single family dwellings, we've been very, very successful. We've got more than 2,000 homes that are currently being built that are all electric in our in Sacramento County, our service territory, and we've got commitments for thousands more from builders within our region. So the acknowledgement of the developers across our region that all electric is the future, I think, is pretty strong, and I think that recognition is very clear. I think that we have very strong partnerships, and we expect to continue to support developers making that choice with some pretty substantial investments to help balance out the cost differential, and those cost differentials are really in those multi-unit above 4 or above, where it really makes the difference. We do have, to Nikki's point, we do have a commitment on the 17 Central project, which is I think it's right on the border of Midtown and downtown, to build an 8-story all-electric building. That will, I think, be an important test case for our region to demonstrate that this is very viable. And then the other thing to give you a little bit of comfort is the California Energy Commission, which sets the Title 24 building standards and updates those every few years, is working very, very hard to focus and encourage much more electrification and diminish the use of natural gas in buildings. And that process is underway right now. I will say that 4 of the 5 major utilities in California are actively engaged in that process, and all 4 are pushing for full electrification within the next couple of cycles. So I think the technology will be proven out, but at the same time, state regulations, I think, will also build more incentives through their rulemaking to move towards all electric. So I don't think, I don't really have, if I had a fear that by 2026 we didn't have solutions around the higher rise being all electric, I think I would not be willing to vote yes on this. But I'm very confident that by the time we get there, we'll have fully demonstrated to our developer partners across the region that all electric is not only a possibility, but at the end of the day, I think will prove to be more cost effective with the technological advancements that are on the horizon. So thank you.
All right, thanks. Nikki and Arlen, Commissioner Wick, do you feel that that was helpful to you?
That was helpful, thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks everyone. Okay, Commissioners Arnold and Blackwood.
Thanks, and I really want to thank Commissioner Wick for the question, and Commissioners Orchard and Mohana for your responses. The comment I was going to make even before the question arose, I think is actually additionally responsive to the question, which is the nature of making a market. A signal like this in a document like this, along with the state level regulatory framework that's in motion, is, you know, a great signal not just to our local partners and players in the ways that they work together and the partnerships that they've got, but it's a signal to the larger markets of providers and equipment developers of future demand, which can help to provide support for increased R&D budgets, increased, you know, manufacturing scalability. Larger manufacturing scale is what I think I'm trying to say, which can help drive down cost. It can help advance technological feasibility and really address those points that Commissioner Mohana called out in her proposed amendment. And so that was the point I wanted to make to this larger conversation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Blackwood.
Hello, I just want to say a huge thank you. A thank you to this commission and the incredible amount of work that you have done. You know I'm the new kid on the block, and I didn't have the ability to work with you closely in the beginning, but it has been such a pleasure over the last month having conversation, folks being willing to hear different perspectives. And it's been a pleasure for me hearing from you on your perspective as we're trying to balance. I think we've got, you know, a COVID crisis and a housing crisis and a racial equity crisis and a very real climate crisis all coming at us all at the same time. And we are trying to find balance, you know, amongst all of that, you know, while facing an economic crisis. So I just want to give my heartfelt thank you to everyone on this commission who's been willing to engage in conversation and hear the concerns, particularly of the development community, as they're really trying to focus on that urban infill housing that we all know we want to keep cars off the road, which we know makes a huge impact. Embrace, you know, those elements of telecommuting that I think are for business and are very much, you know, providing some environmental support too. So thank you for that. Thank you for the dialogue. Thank you for the willingness to come to this decision. You know, with this in mind, you know, we did formally oppose the previous language, and, you know, with this movement and with your understanding, I think that the Metro Chamber finds itself in a position to be able to support this motion and move forward. And know, you know, devil's in the details as we go through ordinance. There are going to be questions on, you know, what if a project was already in the pipeline, and what if I can't use that, you know, to our propane partners. You know, I understand, and we're committed to solving those problems and continuing that conversation and working that out. But again, our thanks for the engagement, our thanks for the work. Thank you for listening and being mindful of all of these myriad challenges we're all juggling. And we would feel very positive in moving forward. So thank you.
Great, thanks. I don't see anyone else who wishes to speak, but I do want to say that I also support this phased approach. It recognizes the need that we, as soon as possible, reduce fossil fuel dependency in our buildings, but it also at the same time addresses the really important issue that we don't want to do something that is going to have a chilling effect on urban infill, which is also a priority for the commission. And I am very pleased that the motion still would require significant mandate to be effective for 2023 for the lower rise buildings. And I appreciate the work everyone's done over the last couple of weeks to pull this together. As we heard from Mayor Steinberg, it is very meaningful to the cities to get a recommendation that comes with consensus or very close to that. So thank you, everyone. I don't see anyone else who wishes to speak, so I will call for a vote then. Julia Kim, would you please do a roll call vote?
Certainly. And apologies, give me one moment.
Yep, take your time.
Excellent. So just as we did with roll call, we'll do this alphabetically by last name. And Arnold?
Aye.
Ayala?
Aye.
Blackwood,
Aye.
Bray,
Aye.
Corliss,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Ledesma,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Littman,
Aye.
Mohana,
Aye.
Nelson,
Aye.
Orchard,
Aye.
Pope Hardin,
Aye.
Rodriguez,
Same.
Tanner,
Aye.
Teal,
Aye.
Wick,
No.
Weezer,
Aye.
and lastly, Stossel.
Aye.
And we
All
have
right.
17 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 absentee.
Abstain. One abstain, not absentee.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. The motion to replace the existing environment recommendation 2 with the new language that came before us passes. So thank you, and thanks to Commissioners Mona and Orchard for the work over the past couple of weeks. Okay, Commissioner Ledesma, did you also want to raise an issue?
I did. Yes, thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. Good to see everybody's faces. I want to start, first of all, by thanking all the staff, as everybody else so far, the staff and you, Chair Stossel, for all the work you've done to lead us through this really great journey of getting to this point where we can actually vote on a document of recommendations of where our 2 cities go forward in meeting the challenge that is climate change. And I'd appreciated hearing from everybody throughout the last, it seems like 2 years, but year and a half to get us to this point, and a lot of really good perspectives. And certainly what I've appreciated is a lot of good understanding from my colleagues on the commission about where Sacramento is. And I know there's been some comments from the Mayor Cabalden, as well as Kate, around West Sacramento's unique position. And even the previous discussion, as my colleague, Councilmember Hanson, had brought up, the costs and the need for partnerships in endeavoring on an initiative like this is real. And we are both faced with similar but unique different challenges. But the one that is around older infrastructure, its ability to accommodate the sweeping changes and trajectory that we're putting ourselves on through this. And one area that I know the commissioners have heard me say for the last meetings, pretty much almost every one, is the recognition that West Sacramento does have a different energy utility partner than what is being talked about here, and what most of you are working through. And it's great to hear the perspective of our friends at SMUD and Arlen, and the great leadership he's had over that organization, and the apparent partnership that is there between him and the city, and him and the private sector, and working towards these very important goals. And what I am proposing today to all of you to help to hopefully support and vote for, is to add into this into our report, is a section in our foundational principles area, which is around our utility partner in West Sacramento's journey that it needs to, that we feel very strongly that we need to move towards, which is to move towards trying to find utility service in our neck of the woods, just maybe a football field away from you on the river, across the river, where things change drastically for energy users, from residents to businesses alike. And this level of service and the level of investments we get from our utility partner just are not on equal terms. And I'll go into the details of all of that, but for the residents at every level, at every part of our older neighborhoods, newer neighborhoods. The discussion, the neighborhoods that have yet to be built for affordable housing and for other high density housing on the riverfront and the Bridge District and the Washington neighborhoods and neighborhoods that have yet to be formed yet. Infrastructure costs are a huge part and getting to the level of what we need for electrification, as well as for all the other investments that are across our city and in this Climate Commission are real. And Commissioner Wick, I want to thank you for kind of bringing up a really good point around, is the will there for us and to kind of make the changes. I understand and appreciate your passion around that. And I would say yes, from the city's perspective, and I think some of the private sector ones, our question is the wherewithal from our current partner in on the utility side is the question for us. At the risk of not kind of bashing somebody who's a utility company, I don't want to do that. I want to focus on how we can get better, how we can, West Sacramento can get on a path to be able to achieve these goals. And so I'm asking for an amendment to our section on the foundational principles and a point of advocacy. All of you have very important roles and voices in our region. And for West Sacramento to take upon itself to move towards trying to find a utility partner that benefits its residents and its businesses, that's able to keep up with the changes we're after. We're going to need all of the strong endorsement of recommendation of advocacy from this group would be a big start. This is something we are engaging on actively, and for us, it's a starting point for us to keep moving and end this exercise and this journey we've made together. With a strong endorsement from all of you on the Sacramento side of the river that sometimes do business on our side of the river, would be helpful to us and a strong statement that we can all work towards going forward. So I think, Kate, you had the proposed language on it, which is a note of advocacy. And I won't read it out loud, but I think you had a chance to look at it if it was up.
Julia, put that up.
But it is a note of advocacy for us as a foundational principle to help West Sacramento and to really and strongly endorse us moving forward on trying to deal with this very fundamental foundational issue that we have. And I've been vocal about this to all of you, and I appreciate it, all of you accepting that and listening to that. We have every intent, as again, the next step for us is to consider the ordinances, to consider where we can fit in electrification we're already moving forward on issues like transit and other areas with the city in partnerships. But this really is a big one, and for us, it's the elephant in the room, and one that we would hopefully get your support on addressing. So I'll stop there, and certainly would welcome questions or any feedback from the commission, but I most certainly would appreciate your support.
Okay, thanks. Commissioner Ledesma, thanks for raising this. I just want to clarify, for those who have the report handy, it would go on page 21, which is the section where we lay out the foundational principles. There's a section on advocacy where there's currently one bullet point, and I understand the motion, I believe you're making a motion, would be to add—
Yes, that was a motion.
would be to add this language as a second bullet point. So it would be a recommendation from the commission that this would be part of the advocacy that the city should take up. Is there a second on the motion?
I will second the motion.
Okay, Commissioner Teal seconds. We'll open it up for discussion. Commissioner Corliss.
Well, Mike beat me to
and then Orchard. Yeah.
Mike beat me to the second of the motion, but just as the regional agency that spans that river, which is sometimes and all too often much bigger than just the shore to shore, we have to do everything we can to make sure West Sacramento can do its part in this commitment to carbon zero. So I think it's I'm very happy to support the motion. And I think it is really important that we make sure that West Sacramento has what it needs, utility and otherwise, to be able to succeed.
Thank you. Commissioner Orchard and then Hanson.
Thank you. I will vote yes for this motion, but I do feel like I need to make a comment, a sense, obviously, based on my conversations with my friends in West Sacramento. I know that one of the options is a closer partnership with SMUD and the city of West Sacramento. So I am supporting this motion because I do think the importance of partners are incredibly important for us to achieve the goals laid out in this report. But I do want to make clear for the record that I have, in supporting this, I am not indicating that SMUD is or should be the partner. That is ultimately something that is would have to be a decision made by my board of directors. So I just wanted to make that clear, that my vote should not be construed as an endorsement that SMUD would be the provider. So thank you.
If I may comment back, Chairwoman, please. Yeah, that's 100% understood. And I think having the support of this body towards our journey, which is yet to come, is what we're really taking here. So I appreciate your feedback and your candor, and appreciate the support for this.
Thanks. Commissioner Hanson?
I think Chris did a really great job laying it out. Certainly we have a bounty of riches in our utility here, but it kind of comes back to this idea, and James Corliss said it, which is that in our 6-county region, we have some places where they have the luxury of a really tremendously forward-leaning utility, and other places they're still trying to figure out what that looks like. And so I think that we get very myopic, focused on the cities themselves. But my point earlier was, how do we ensure that this is a sustainable outcome, but also how we translate this change beyond the borders of the city of Sacramento or beyond the borders of the city of West Sacramento. And a big driver of that is the underlying decisions made at CalISO, at the CPUC, and in the state capitol, as well as in the private investor-owned utilities that may operate, or the CCAs that operate. And I hope it's not lost on the public that as we do this work, the greatest limitation we face is that very one, in addition to the transition of the transportation sector, which is incumbent on the grid to be able to support it. So the electrical grid. So I think it's extremely important. I want to thank Chris for Commissioner Ledesma for his great work on this. And I think it's going to be another piece of the overall puzzle here.
Great, thank you. I don't see anyone else who wishes to speak. I would just say I also am in full support. I almost feel like it's a no-brainer, and that we kind of assumed the sentiment was embodied in what we were doing. So I'm glad you raised it, Commissioner Ledesma. It needs to be said, and I support it. Okay, I don't see anyone else's hand up, so we'll take a vote. Julia, Kim, will you please call the roll?
Arnold?
Aye.
Ayala?
Aye.
Blackwood?
Aye.
Bray?
Aye.
Corliss?
Aye.
Hanson? Hanson?
Aye.
Ledesma?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Littman?
Aye.
Mohana?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Orchard?
Aye.
Pope Hardin?
Aye.
Double aye.
Rodriguez?
That's 2.
Aye.
Tanner?
Aye.
Teal?
Aye.
Wick?
Aye.
Weiser?
Aye.
And Chair Stossel.
Aye. Okay, very good. The motion to add the advocacy language around the West Sac electricity service will be added to the report. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you for raising it. Okay, we can now come back to our original task, which is to hopefully approve the report as a whole. Why don't I call for a motion on that?
Motion that we approve the Climate Commission's report.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bray. Thank you. Great. So the motion is to approve and submit the report to the mayors of Sacramento and West Sacramento. Any discussion on the motion? All right, I do not see anyone's hand up. So we will move to the vote then. Julia Kim, roll call please.
Arnold?
Aye.
Ayala?
Aye.
Blackwood?
Aye.
Bray?
Aye.
Corliss?
Aye.
Hanson?
Enthusiastically aye.
Ledesma?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Littman?
Aye.
Mohana?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Orchard?
Aye.
Pope-Arden?
Aye.
Rodriguez?
Aye.
Tanner?
Aye.
Teal?
Aye.
Wick?
Aye.
Weiser?
Aye.
And Chair Sospold.
Aye. So the motion to approve and submit the report passed unanimously. Congratulations, everybody. I do feel a little joy right now. Thank you, everyone, for the hard work that went into this. And Kate, Mies, and Julia Kim and your team, thank you for the outstanding effort and work you've put into this. It's much appreciated. And everybody, the stakeholders, the tax, everyone who put in so much work. This is really a great moment, and look forward to submitting the report, and I look forward to all of us being there to support next steps. Which brings us to our next agenda item, which is about looking forward. What are the next steps by the cities? How do we make sure that we do keep momentum going and that this report isn't just words, but becomes live action? How do we ensure that implementation? So we're going to hear from the two cities on their planned next steps. And then we'll have a commission discussion about how we can participate and commit to keeping that momentum going. So we're ready for the city discussion. Julia Kim, are the panelists on, or do you need a moment?
David, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, so our excellent. Our first speaker is David Tilley, who you all know, the principal planner from the city of West Sacramento. David, over to you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations to all who have been a part of this. Tonight's effort was a major milestone, and I really believe will be something that many of us will look back on in the future as we make progress on what was clearly a crisis. So, Julia, put up the next slide, please. So, so for West Sacramento purposes, I think as I've reported on the last couple of meetings, we have been working on our cap really since late last year. It's really been informed by what this commission has produced and all of the tax and all the meetings of which I know I was part of many of them and heard many of the voices that were in there from all walks of life. I think that's been one of the best parts of this whole process, is the wide variety of persons and people in industries that have been represented. Obviously, COVID has definitely impacted our ability to do some of the outreach that I had planned to do this spring with the nice weather and Earth Day and Little League and all the other things that, well, didn't happen. But we will be doing some virtual outreach. And then meanwhile, a couple other things have come along the way that are hopefully going to be nesting well with our climate work. We're doing a vulnerability, should I say, Delta Stewardship Council is doing a vulnerability assessment of the whole Delta, but they are doing a lot with us in West Sacramento as well through a Civic Spark program. And that's yielding a lot of good information that will go into our work. And it's also housing element season, and part of that this time around is the SB 379 work for resiliency. So as we're doing and since housing element has such a, the hard deadline on it, we were going to be doing some joint outreach with that effort with housing element and then also climate, because really the two are completely interrelated, and the persons that we need to reach the most for both climate work and housing work are really the same people. So I'm pleased that some of the timing of all these things are going to come together, and we'll hopefully be able to look at these things more comprehensively and collectively than working on them sort of, each one in a vacuum. So Juliet, next slide, please. So these are some of the things I envision we will complete now that the Mayor's Commission is coming to a conclusion. We definitely need to present the final report to our full council, finishing our housing element work with its subset of both SB 379 and SB 1000. Delta Stewardship Council, with our input, will complete the vulnerability assessment, which is important for our general plan work. And then we have several other projects that are in the works that may be able to be accelerated. We have to get in front of our city manager and council on a lot of these, but there definitely are some options out there. We've also long been working on a mobility action plan that is clearly interrelated to this effort and the need to reduce VMT and the emissions that come with that, and to also just help people get around better, especially those who may need assistance in getting around and don't want to have a car or other things like that. And then also underway, updating all of our traffic study guidelines to get us further in sync with SB 743. I do think this is also going to be a key part in our region as to how we can get the emissions down from vehicles, which I think it was stated earlier is more than half of the emissions in our region. And then all this is, what's most exciting about this is that, all these things are interrelated and may have many co-benefits with them, particularly as this commission has rightfully taken on a lot of notions around equity out there. I think that's been one of the best outcomes of the commission's work, is the renewed emphasis on equity. So with that, I'd like to close my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions and from the commission, and I'm just excited that we're here tonight at the finish line with a lot of good work by a lot of good people.
Great. Thank you so much, David, for all your work throughout and for your presentation. Are there questions for Mr. Tilley? Commissioner Ayala?
Thank you, Chair. Not necessarily a question. I just wanted to thank Mr. Tilley for a nice presentation, and to acknowledge that on the theme of partnership across the river, even though we are the Sacramento Metro Area District, we do work in partnership across the river explicitly with our friends, Solano, AQMD. And in that context, I also want to acknowledge David for having a very fruitful conversation with us, specifically about one of the examples that he posted in his presentation, and that is the electrification of the VIA system. That is one area where we as an entity in the region and as a member of the commission, we can commit to continue to work on. Transportation is key, and electrifying it is going to be one of the main approaches to deal with air and climate pollution. So we stand ready to work across the river and continue to work with our friends at the City of West Sacramento to try to do as much as we can with the projects currently on hand. So thank you, David.
Thank you.
If I may, Madam Chair, just comment on that real fast. And just want to thank Commissioner Ayala for that kind of partnership. You know, VIA is really our VIA program has been one of the more successful ventures in the transit we've had in the past few years. And certainly it has brought to us a level of service to the city it has not seen. It's activated, I should say, it spanned through sort of a generational need that was there, an equity need that we did not know was there. So certainly the last part of that is the electrification of it. So certainly that is a huge, huge boost. I appreciate you bringing that to us and working with us on that. So just want to say thank you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, Mr. Tilley, I mean, I know we all want to support you as you move forward. So keep us informed when you're going to your council and how we can help. Okay, any other questions for West Sac? Yeah, Commissioner Corley.
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you. And thanks, David. Just to add on to Commissioner Ledesma's comments, you know, whether it's VIA or it's so many things that the City of West Sacramento has been doing, I applaud heartily the leadership role it's taken for quite some time now. But I did want to have a question for David, and I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot here, and I hope maybe you can answer it. I had the same question for the City of Sacramento. You came to us at the beginning of this process, and you laid out the cap, and you laid out the things that the city was already kind of planning on doing. So I'm wondering, now that you look at the report, you look at the recommendations, can you identify for us what you think are going to be some of the biggest challenges that you have to incorporate the recommendations of the commission into the DNA of how you function as a city?
Well, I think the electrification one is going to be one, at least short term, that may be a challenge. And you know, I was really pleased to see the additional recommendation that this commission, you know, voted in. I believe that will help us. It has been something that I've been dialoguing with some of our more construction savvy, you know, individuals in our city about, because, you know, it will be a sea change, but, you know, every new project that I'm talking to right now, and I sort of suggest to them that they do it all electric, and I am getting almost universal positive response to saying, yes, we will do that. So I'm encouraged by that. The proof will be in the pudding when they actually come in to build, but no one is, you know, freaked out about that, you know, so far. So I'm excited about that. Even though, you know, having a different utility provider makes it a little different game, but we're making a lot of headway on there. But I do believe a lot of the transportation stuff are things that we were already well, you know, aligned for and positioned to do, especially with Councilman Ledesma and his role at Yolabus. And then, you know, we mentioned VIA. Many of these things were things we were already, you know, looking to do or are doing or will be doing. So I'm optimistic about it, and I look forward to the opportunity to get in front of the city manager and ultimately the city council, and so we can really start to hopefully roll up our sleeves on a lot of these measures and get them, you know, into our DNA, as you stated.
Thanks, David.
All right, thanks. Anyone else who wishes to ask a question or speak? Okay, looks like not. Thank you, David. It's been great working with you.
Thank you, and Chair. Thank you, Chair, and you've done a fantastic job with what has clearly been a very large group and something that has evolved quite a bit since we first started.
Right. Good luck and hope to talk to you soon. Okay, next we will hear from Sacramento. So I'd invite Matt Hertel. He's a principal planner from the city of Sacramento to update us on Sacramento's next steps. And I believe Julia Burrows from the mayor's office is also going to join for this portion of the presentation.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Chair Stossbaugh and members of the commission. I'm Matt Hertel, the City of Sacramento's acting long-range planning manager. Recognize the tremendous work and collective brainpower it took over these last 18 months to develop this ambitious plan. City staff appreciates the opportunity to have worked so closely with the commission. And between city staff and our consultant team, we found our way to all 5 technical advisory committees. We are excited to see how closely your final plan aligns with many of the city's current and planned initiatives. We're committed to working with Mayor Steinberg, other city departments, and all of you to carry this work forward. Next slide, please. I'm also looking forward to hearing about the collective commitments from all of you and your agencies to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. The City of Sacramento is also committed to early and longer term actions to address climate change with a particular focus on the strategies that will deliver the most significant greenhouse gas emission reductions as is recommended in your report. I will begin with the draft key strategies of our 2040 General Plan and Climate Action Plan, or CAP for short, and then I'll highlight some of our current and near-term efforts with the focus that support your year 1 recommendations. I'll conclude by laying out opportunities for you to continue your journey by working closely with the city to adopt and implement bold climate readiness and GHG emission reduction strategies. Next slide, please. In November 2019, the Sacramento City Council adopted the vision and guiding principles for the 2040 General Plan and CAP. Over the last 6 weeks, residents were asked to provide input on 25 key strategies that align with the guiding principles through an interactive community questionnaire. The General Plan's Environmental Justice Working Group has reviewed these key strategies through an equity lens, and they will also guide the formation of other policies and implementation programs as we move forward. 10 of these key strategies are directly related to climate change and resiliency and echo the Commission's recommendations. Next slide, please. Even with the actions to curtail emissions, the impacts of climate change are being felt now and are disproportionately impacting our low-income residents and communities of color. In support of the General Plan and CAP, our team is preparing a vulnerability assessment to identify the risks that climate change poses to the city, and especially to our most vulnerable populations. The report will assess the impacts of different climate stressors, such as extreme heat, air quality, flooding, and drought, on residents and the city's critical infrastructure. The climate change vulnerability assessment will inform the development of adaptive measures and strategies the city can implement to reduce risk of these impacts. A few of the proposed key strategies that I'll highlight now speak to climate adaptation and resiliency. Next slide, please. Draft key strategies include developing a neighborhood resilience network program that offers resources, trainings, and strategies to help the most vulnerable communities be prepared for emergencies. Increasing the amount of tree canopy cover in the city and prioritizing investments in the areas with the greatest urban heat island effects, areas of poor air quality, and areas with populations most vulnerable to the effects of increased and extreme heat. Next slide, please. As you know, electrification is a core technology allowing for deep GHG reductions and eventually carbon neutrality. It's hard to imagine a scenario where fossil fuels continue to be used in our buildings and vehicles and we are able to still achieve carbon neutrality. Draft key strategies include requiring all new buildings and gradually transitioning existing buildings to be all electric and eliminate the use of natural gas and fossil fuels for building operations. Assisting low-income residents to transition their homes from gas to electric by offering financial incentives. And providing infrastructure to fully transition from combustion engine vehicles and supporting the use of zero-emission vehicles. Next slide, please. Using an equity framework to prioritize and fund infrastructure improvements in historically disinvested and underserved neighborhoods, and facilitating compact mixed-use development in key commercial corridors to create vibrant, walkable, and transit-supportive neighborhoods. Next slide, please. right-sizing streets to fit today's mobility needs to prioritize walking, biking, and transit over automobile use. Working with SAC-RT to continue to provide free or more affordable transit passes for low-income residents, youth, and seniors. Next slide, please. And before discussing the city's anticipated near-term efforts, I want to highlight some of our recent municipal achievements. Next slide, please. Since 2005, the city has reduced municipal GHG emissions from our own operations by 28% and have reduced municipal energy use by 34%. We've achieved over 1.4 million in annual savings from these energy reduction projects, and we have 4.9 megawatts of on-site solar PV and off-site solar through our Solar Shares partnership with SMUD. Next slide, please. The city is demonstrating leadership by having one of the greenest fleets in the nation. We have a zero-emission vehicle first commitment with a pledge that at least 75% of our annual light-duty replacements are zero-emission vehicles. We've been able to attract private investment that benefits the city at large, such as Electrify America's $44 million investment in EV charging infrastructure, transit, car share, and outreach. And you can learn more about our EV work in the city's first EV progress report to be available online in the next few days. Next slide, please. The year one recommendations, including the 4 overarching priorities and the 11 COVID-19 focused climate strategies, have been shared with the city leadership. These recommendations are aligned with many of our efforts currently underway. The city's 2020 state and federal legislative platform serves as the framework for the city's advocacy positions and includes an emphasis on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, vehicle miles traveled, and implementing the city's climate action plan. City staff is committed to working with our environmental justice working group to develop a marginalized populations definition to be incorporated into our 2040 general plan. We also look forward to having discussions about how city staff may be able to support the establishment of a community-run environmental justice collaborative governance committee. Next slide, please. The implementation of these longer and near-term key strategies and many more GHG reduction measures likely to be included in our draft cap will allow the city to reach the state's 2030 reduction goals. However, even with the implementation of these strategies, including near-term building electrification, we don't currently achieve the goal of carbon neutrality by 2045. We will continue to work hard to see if we can identify a path forward for carbon neutrality in this update to our climate action plan. We will also revisit our emissions inventory and make necessary tweaks to our reduction strategies during our next 5-year cap update. Next slide, please. Staff is committed to working with city leadership, the community at large, and regional partners such as yourselves to move your recommendations forward and develop an ambitious climate action plan for City Council consideration at the end of 2021. To accomplish this, we ask for your continued participation. In September, we'll be hosting 10 virtual community plan area workshops to receive proposed feedback on proposed changes to the city's land use, housing element sites inventory, roadway network, and geographically focused equity and environmental justice strategies. In August and October, we'll be hosting workshops with our Planning and Design Commission to get feedback on the CAP's key GHG reduction strategies and the general plan's major policy and land use changes. We will then be asking our City Council to confirm these strategies in November and provide direction to staff to evaluate them in the Master Environmental Impact Report, and then begin drafting the full documents for public review in May 2021. To stay actively involved in the development of the city's 2040 General Plan and Climate Action Plan, please sign up for our email alerts at sec2040gpu.org. Next slide. I really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Okay.
Madam
Thank
Chair.
you, Mr. Hurdle. Yes. I can't tell who's speaking.
Sorry, it's Commissioner Hanson.
Okay, I should know your voice by now.
I tried to raise my hand, but for some reason it's functioning.
Yeah.
Oh, there it goes. Okay. I just wanted to add a couple things. First, I want to thank our staff. We have a tremendous amount of work still to do, but a couple things that I would add are around infill development and our efforts to really assertively prioritize infill. Certainly, we haven't been successful at limiting development outside of infill, but what we've tried to do is really invert the cost structure so that infill development is at least on par with the suburban development that is eating up so much farmland, natural habitat, and other stuff. And it's not been without controversy, but I do think that that's important, along with some of the streamlining measures we've voted on just recently. We'll continue to move down that path. The other thing, and I know Matt's in the community development department, but the efforts around making complete streets and making parking protected bikeways throughout the central city and beyond. We have some of our cycle tracks in process in communities outside of the central city, but that work about making sure that shared mobility, active transportation, walkability, bikeability, supporting transit, all goes hand in hand with our efforts to create transit-oriented development. And I think that as we work together across the river, certainly SACOG has challenged us with huge infill goals for housing units, that we don't have a choice but to continue that work to reduce trips, vehicle miles traveled, but also just trips as well. And I think the city takes it extremely seriously. And these are hard-fought battles, sometimes with constituencies that don't always appreciate the climate goals that we have at heart. So thank you, Matt. Thank you to our city team. And I'm looking forward to the ambitious work ahead of us. And SACOG's money to help do it.
Thank you. Okay, in the queue, we've got Commissioner Littman, then Ayala, then Bray.
I'd like to see that graph again that shows that we can't achieve carbon neutrality by 2045, because I find that very disturbing. It doesn't look like, yeah. I don't feel that the city is being ambitious enough. Knowing that we have to have our emissions by 2030, I don't think that this is appropriate scale. I think you need to go back and find out how you can get most of the carbon out by 2030 and maybe have a little bit of the hard stuff left before 2045. But this isn't acceptable based on the science and based on the city's climate emergency declaration.
And I'm happy to address that, Chair, if you'd like.
Great, please do.
Yeah, and I will make it clear that this is where we stand now. These are really premature early draft cap measures. So the outline that I laid out in my schedule next steps, we'll be working with all of you to review these draft cap measures. And certainly if you have creative ideas and solutions about how to get us there, we would be happy to hear them. I will make a note that, we're close. With our preliminary draft cap measures, we're about 100,000 metric tons off, about 3% of our current GHG inventory for 2016. So we're close. But I also note that these assumptions include an effective date of a building electrification ordinance of 2021. So we will be having to shift that based on, likely the action we'll take and recommendations and reports. So there are things that we can certainly move on, and we're committed to working together with all of you to see if we can actually hit it in this climate action plan.
I appreciate that, but I would also say that even if we change the electrification deadline to later, that shouldn't be. If you can do it by 2021, then do it. I don't think you should take our recommendations as a cap. It's a baseline, it's minimal. And we need to do this for so many reasons. And I just am concerned that this graph shows a lack of ambition. I think, and we'll be working with you, definitely. And I hope that there were so many comments made by residents of our area. I hope everybody jumps in and helps push you guys along to make sure that you do, that you recognize this climate emergency and take the steps necessary. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lori. Commissioner Ayala.
Thank you, Chair. And I also want to thank Matt and the rest of the city staff for presenting today and showing their progress on the CAP. And I want to thank you and others, because I know that we as an agency work with the city very well. And I thank you for including some of the work on the urban heat island effect study that just got completed, and you showed the picture of our community car share program as well. So there's plenty there, more that we can work on to help each other. I have a question for you, and I also wanted to reference your gap analysis slide, but I'll have to say to Commissioner Littman, I agree with the point, and just a reminder that I do give acknowledgement and kudos to what the city of Sacramento is doing, because a lot of what is going to be required to close that gap, as Matt showed, may very well be decisions that happen at the state and at the federal level. So to all of us in the commission who are committed to continue to advocate for what we're trying to do today, I think is basically a call to action, because I can point to a couple of things, just as brief examples. Ironically, today, the federal government rules that will make higher polluting cars the law of the land in the future goes into effect today. This federal action is going to increase by that single action, the carbon emissions from future cars by 50%. So to Matt's point and others that are working, doing as much as they can with their climate action plans, I think we need to remember that a lot of what they need to be able to stay on the path to neutrality is going to come from other places. The state, for example, is already saying that 100% new EV sales by 2035 may not necessarily be enough. So, we're in the state capitol. Many of us need to be ready to walk down the street to the Capitol building and advocate for some of the things that city of Sacramento and many others across the state are going to be needed. So let us remember that it is indeed a call to action for all of us. But to my question, Matt, specifically on the gap analysis, I also wanted to be more explicit and ask, what is the process? It's very likely that as we move forward, all of us, unfortunately, are going to find out that we're not moving as fast as we need to, and we're not doing enough. So for your CAP, once you take it to City Council and you get it approved in 2021, what is after that as far as iterating on some of these measures and taking a second look? Can you explain that to us?
Sure. I mean, as you know, probably more important than adopting it is implementing it, right? So we're going to commit staff and resources to implementing the actions, especially those that have the most impact in reducing our GHG reductions. And also, I mean, the point I would make is it's very obvious to all of you, there are certain levers the city has and doesn't have, and there are certain things that we can do to really push forward. And there are some the more moving targets, with VMT and mobility, as you mentioned. It's a challenge, and that's the biggest piece of the pie, 57% in the city of Sacramento. In natural gas and buildings is 14%. So if we can get rid of that one, we certainly have made great progress, but there's a long ways to go. So it will be iterations, it will be monitoring and implementing and looking at it. And we've committed ourselves to updating our general plan and our CAP every 5 years, which is not common. It's a big undertaking, but we know that the reality and technology and market changes. We want to make sure that we're up to date on that and up to speed on that. So as state mandates change, as technology changes, I think so will our ability to move the needle. But again, it's not the final. This is a preliminary draft CAF measures. We haven't even aired it out to the public yet. So just the key strategies. So we're not giving up yet, and we're gonna push as hard as we can push to get there and work with all of you. So thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Commissioner Bray and then Commissioner Pope-Harden.
Yeah, I have a question. First of all, thank you for your presentation. I have a question regarding the community environmental commission that you're imagining will be recruited. And I'd like to know what your timeline is, first of all, for that. But I'd also like to understand a little bit more about the 10 meetings that you're planning to have. I'm assuming in this COVID-19 environment that they will be virtual, will they not? And so I guess I have a two-part question. One, what is that timeline for engaging that community-led commission? And then secondly, how are you imagining that they can be leveraged to ensure that, one, the outreach that you're doing, while it's virtual, making sure that the folks who really need to be heard from the community have access? Because we know that broadband access is a challenge. And so how will they be able to weigh in? And even before that, how will you leverage that commission to really do that outreach and really get the folks in the room who can tell you not only what the impact of climate change is on their lives, but can also talk with you about how they are adapting? And also, how are you going to, by hearing from them, ensure that there won't be any unintended consequences? And so I know there's a lot there, but I just want to understand, what the timeline is, what the process is going to be to ensure that there's inclusion, given the fact that we have framed this entire plan or report in equity, and making sure that we are using that lens as we go forward and we think about strategies for implementation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your questions. And I hear three different questions there, so I'll take them in order. First is, our current work around environmental justice. We have an environmental justice working group that we've been working with since the inception of our general plan and our CAP. They have reviewed and provided input on our key strategies, and two of those strategies were developed specifically from their recommendations that I talked about earlier. So we have some next steps with the Environmental Justice Working Group, including doing subgroups and diving into 5 key topics under environmental justice: pollution and air quality, civic engagement and investment prioritization, public facilities and physical activity, food access, and safe and sanitary housing. And then after these workshops that I'll talk about in a second, the full EJ working group will reconvene and review draft policies and actions that have been developed on the basis of the community input, technical studies, et cetera. Now that group is obviously separate and different from the group recommended in the report. So, my commitment is to working with the members of the commission and the mayor's office and others to have that dialogue and what that looks like. I know that the emphasis is on community run. So, but whatever that means from a staff perspective, how we can support that effort, we're certainly willing to do that and have those discussions whenever folks would like. In terms of reaching out to folks in the era of COVID, you're absolutely right. It is not an easy task. It's never been an easy task to make sure that we hear from all corners of the community and harder to reach populations. We have taken, I think, great measures to reach out to as many folks as we can. So, for example, we just had our virtual questionnaire for the general plan. These 25 key strategies that I talked about earlier, right? I went over 10 of those. And so we work very closely with our EJ working group and our CBOs and try to get it out to their constituency. But we also, one of the innovative approaches we used is we used youth ambassadors. We had 45 youth sign up to engage their family members, especially those family members whose first language is not English, where they could translate and work with their family members and also engage their friends. So we got a number of responses from that, and they're all trying to win a prize. So we're certainly open to suggestions, any ideas you have that are innovative to reach out to folks and to make sure we're hearing from as many folks as possible. I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate those answers. I would also encourage the city to really be intentional about setting a goal in terms of how many people that you really want to hear from and reach, so that it's not just, okay, we're going to try to, we're going to get the word out and then as many people as we can get to, they can just come, but rather being really intentional and really focused on ensuring that, there's a robust study of what people, how they feel about this plan and the potential impact, and then what role they think that they can play, or what are some of the barriers that they see. I mean, I really want it to not just be kind of the grass tops folks, but really, really engaging and setting a goal and being very intentional about making sure that those voices are heard.
Absolutely.
Matt, can I chime in for a
Please.
second? I believe Julia Burrows from the mayor's office is here somewhere. She just wrote me that she's available to speak on it, and she could speak to the Environmental Justice Advisory Group that Mayor Steinberg mentioned that he is going to launch. So Julia, Kim, can you enable or do whatever we need to do so that Julia Burrows can be heard?
And let me just try talking.
You are. Okay, perfect.
Okay, yeah, I'm here. Hello, everyone, and congratulations on adopting the plan. We're ready to get work started tomorrow. And the first priority for the mayor's office is the EJ Governance Advisory Board. We've been having a number of conversations behind the scenes under your guidance with the cultural brokers. That is the first place that we start, Stephanie, at your advisement and Naila's advisement, is to reach out to those that are already out in the community. Timeline that I'm recommending for the mayor is to have a short list of members within the first 30 days. So August 1st, and that's in consultation with you, April and Naila, as well as I've had multiple conversations with Jackie Cole, who is advising obviously both our equity TAC and the EJ working group for the general plan. So there's a lot of work to do. To answer James' question briefly on the barriers, I'm going to flip that into the opportunities. And the first opportunity that we have is to talk about the work of the commission and prioritize the community in setting the goals of what we should do first. And that will happen through the EJ Governance Advisory Committee. So we need to identify members. Again, this is a community-led committee, not a city-appointed committee. But we need to identify those cultural brokers who will help find the membership, and the other priority is to find the resources. So that's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. We've identified 5 grants already to go after to fund this initiative and to pay the facilitators for the initial outreach that we need to do in multiple locations and creatively, depending on the broadband access or what we can do in person. So this is the top priority for us to get started, identify the shortlist within 30 days and get started with the community meeting. Mayor's office, some representation, maybe perhaps just in listening mode, but community-led with the cultural brokers that you have helped us identify first out of the gate. I would also say that funding is an issue. James is helping us with Green Means Go and the infrastructure package that hopefully will come out of the House on the big ticket items. All of that will require community outreach, and this is the Community Advisory Board that will help us with that. Advocacy and political will is all of this, and as we've had several discussions in the mayor's office, climate justice is racial justice. This has not been more important than now, and so we hope to work with the commission on a continuing basis through all of your equity initiatives, and I know some of your commitments are related to that, to get the community list identified by the community within 30 days, and then to start supporting them with resources to meet regularly. Happy to answer any other questions on that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bray, do you feel like your question has been answered? Okay.
Yes.
You're good, okay. Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Pope-Harden.
To unmute the thing and then mute the cartoons. Let's hope we can give this peacefully. So I have been going back and forth about the tone and when I wanted to make this comment. And while I think that like the report is great and that if we are able to implement everything in the report, it's going to be a great accomplishment for the Sacramento community, I really struggle with the way that we are using and talking about equity and environmental justice still. I think I'm going to try and use an analogy around it, which is we are using it, environmental justice and equity is something like we're sprinkling through this process, like seasoning, right? Like oregano and at the end, when what it really needed to do from the very beginning is marinate in environmental justice, right? Environmental justice comes with principles that start with being from the community, from the ground up. And so while this report is great and it has equity and environmental justice sprinkled throughout it in all the places it should be, I think before we really pat ourselves on the back, we need to be clear that this report was not made equitably and does not uphold environmental justice. Now, with that said, I think that there is a great opportunity with the Environmental Justice Governing Working Group or committee to really like infuse environmental justice as we go into the implementation phase. And with that, it does have to be, like Commissioner Bray said, very intentional, very inclusive, and accessible to everyone. And there are broadband issues, there's issues with technology, there's people's comfort levels with technology that all need to be taken into account as we move forward. And then I also want to make a point just about the urgency around it, because these communities that we're talking about uplifting don't have until, or will face the most impact at 2030. So while we think that it's okay, I mean, they're already feeling it now, right? So to the graph that Commissioner Littman had a question on that said that, you know, 2045, we may be able to make the mark. For some of these communities, like there is a sense of urgency. And when we talk about like there might be funding or we need to extend recommendations for building requirements, these communities don't have that same luxury. And so I would hope that the same type of grace that we allowed for like the low-rise and high-rise buildings, that same type of urgency and commitment to change and mold and accommodate, I think we need to, you know, give that same energy to disadvantaged communities and communities that are already disproportionately impacted by our climate burden. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for your candor, Commissioner Pope Hardin. And we're grateful that we have your voice. I hope that very much that the equity framework that we worked hard on for the report captures a little bit of what you said to pass on to the cities as they move forward. And I hope that you'll stay involved to make sure that the important things that you're talking about do occur and that we do this the right way. I believe the sentiment is there and we can all learn as we go. So I thank you for your comments. Does anyone else wish to speak on the city? We're on the city recommendation, city next steps right now. Okay, I don't see any hands up. Okay, Mr. Hurdle, thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you, Ms. Burrows, for being available. Okay. Our last item is around near-term actions and opportunities that we all can focus on. Our recommendations in the report are to the cities, but to succeed, we're going to need not only strong leadership from the cities, but we're going to need regional collaboration, partnerships among agencies and NGOs, continued strong advocacy from the community, and as Commissioner Pope Hardin just said, continued and increased steadfast focus on equity. Several commissioners have made commitments on behalf of their organizations, and those, I am very grateful for all of you for putting that down in writing and making those commitments. Those letters are on the LGC Mayor's Commission website for those who want to look at them. But I would like to invite the commissioners who made those commitments or others to talk about some of that. I think that what you all have written and committed to is inspiring, and that it would be a nice way to close out the commission. Would anyone wish to volunteer to talk about commitment going forward?
Sac State's willing to speak up, okay, at this point.
Thank
We're
you.
very committed to the plan and to everything that's coming forward. And they're very important to us and what we're trying to accomplish. So let me just give you 3 commitments where we're working very hard. With the built environment, we're electrifying all of our campus buildings. We have just finished now our new Welcome Center, and it was constructed fully electric. It's the first building on our campus to do that, but it's the right thing to do. With community health and resiliency, we are currently developing our zero waste plan. We have a target of 2035. This is a great place for us to now move forward on that front and really reduce all of the waste on our campus. Finally, on mobility, we've committed to increasing trips via active transportation to 30% by 2030 and 30% of all trips by transit and pooled shared riding by 2030. So Sac State is going to be committed and will remain committed. And today, yeah, it's time to take a deep breath. It's time to smile a little bit. You have to take a deep breath before you run a marathon. Let's get ready to run the marathon.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. And yeah, I'll come back at you in just a second. I just want to thank you for the commitments. For your school is such a model in the community nationally for the work on sustainability. And we all appreciate the leadership, especially among everything you're going through right now. It's a great example of we can get it done despite all the current challenges. Commissioner Lee, I see you.
Yes, Madam Chairwoman. So Faculty would like to make some commitments too.
Okay.
First, we commit to extending our student ride-free RT program for another year. City of Sacramento graciously agreed to give us funding for the next year. So prior to COVID-19, our students' ridership was up approximately 125%. That is a huge jump. And collecting our youth to schools, internships, and other recreational travelers. So that is our first commitment. Our second commitment is over the next year, Faculty will finalize a comprehensive zero-emission vehicle strategy, a plan for converting the entire fleet of over 500 revenue and non-revenue vehicles to zero emission. And the estimated cost will be over close to $500 million. So we're going to have this plan, if we can get the funding, in place earlier, then we will try to convert these vehicles early. So the third commitment is we will operate the new airport express bus, which is Route 142 service, with electric buses as soon as vehicles can be procured to showcase the region's commitment to sustainability. And next one is Faculty will prioritize joint development of surplus property to facilitate smart growth, transit-oriented development, and sustainable, vibrant communities. And the Faculty, in partnership with CCAG, will finalize a TOD toolkit to assist with additional development. And finally, over the next year, Faculty will finalize a high-capacity bus rapid transit study that will identify several key corridors in this region, and with assistance from our partners. Faculty will pursue federal small start grants funding to implement a regional BRT network by working with our partners like SACA, Air Quality District, and others. And we will do our best, and we feel the future is very bright. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Lee, and thank you for your leadership. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Next, I have Commissioner Wick, then Orchard.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Steinberg and Cabaldon, community leaders, LGC city staff, and my fellow commissioners. I just want to say that it has been an honor to serve as a commissioner for the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change in these past 18 months. I was excited to be appointed to the commission because it gave me the opportunity to elevate the concerns of the disability community to a broader audience. I did not know at the time that my participation would open my eyes to issues of equity that intersected with disability. For example, prior to my participation in the commission, I could not identify the most underserved areas of our community, which are the most disproportionately impacted by the effects of climate change due to systemic racism. I also had a chance to meet environmental justice leaders who have been elevating issues of equity in our community for years. This work is not just a moment or a hashtag to them. The recommendations contained in the Commission's report are necessary to move our region toward a carbon zero future before it is too late. But the real test will be implementation. Implementation will only be successful if the community sets the table. The cities must focus their implementation efforts on those neighborhoods most disproportionately impacted by climate change. Those in a position to implement the Commission's recommendations must ensure that the entire process is community-led. They must also not be tempted by the notion that some wins for these communities are better than nothing. They must be brave enough to enact anti-racist policies. The path to true success means some of us need to ask ourselves why we believe that another community's advancement threatens our own. And implementation will be successful if we are guided by the equity principles and framework developed by the Equity TAC. As I stated in RAL's letter of support for the recommendations, our agency will participate in the implementation process by providing staff resources, technical assistance, and community education. Our goal is to ensure that people with disabilities are fully integrated into each tactic and to each city's climate resiliency plan. This is especially important because people with disabilities intersect with every other demographic group in our region. I want to thank Mayor Steinberg and Mayor Cabaldon, and I also want to thank all of the community members who took the time to submit public comment and participated in the tax. I want to thank the Local Government Commission for staffing the commission, and thank you to Anne for your leadership as chair. And also thank you to the city staff who presented to us at each meeting. And to my fellow commissioners, I want to say that I am humbled by your brilliance and enjoyed learning and working with each of you.
Thank you, Commissioner Wick. I'm always touched when you speak. I've learned a lot from you. Okay, in the queue, I have Commissioners Orchard, Littman, Arnold, and Rodriguez. So we'll start with you, Arlen.
Thank you. And I just learned an important lesson, which is I never want to follow April again because she's so well spoken. So, but in all honesty, it has been an honor to serve on the commission, and it's been an honor to serve with all of you. I think the commitment and passion and brains of this group has shown through with every single commissioner, and I know I have certainly learned a huge amount, not only about the issue, which I thought I knew a lot about, but how it impacts many communities other than the one I live in. So I think that is incredibly powerful. I think that probably the most important and enduring output of this group is the work that will be done on equity. And I think I want to thank the folks that have done so much on it in this group to bring it to light and to bring a structure that I think will be very meaningful going forward. And I want to thank you for your leadership. I can't recall how long this commission was supposed to last and how much work it was supposed to be, but I know it was a very small portion of what was put in, and I think You did a masterful job of herding all the cats, let's just say, to get us to this point, because I know it hasn't been easy. And likewise to Kate and Julia on their incredible work in getting us to this point. You know, the nice thing for me as I look at the other commissioners, and I have partnerships, SMUD has partnerships with many of them, but I also now see many more partnerships are possible as a result of this. SMUD is making significant commitments to move the recommendations forward. It is in alignment with our already strong commitments on climate change. I think I mentioned several times, we have approximately a $7 billion investment plan. Of that, by 2025, we'll have spent about $1.5 billion on reducing carbon in our region. A large part of that will be focused on electrification as we move forward. I think incredibly important in all of this effort is that we have over the last several years through our Sustainable Communities program refocused our dollars to make a much more meaningful impact in those communities that have historically been left behind in our community. And I think our commitment is to double those efforts going forward. We have increased our investments in things like energy efficiency and partnerships through Sustainable Communities with folks like Stephanie's organization as an example, in these communities through the Promise Zone, et cetera. We'll be doubling down on that. We have already begun this year expanding our Shade Tree Program partnership with the Tree Foundation to enhance the tree canopy in tree deficient neighborhoods, which if you look at the disadvantaged community maps, interestingly, those completely overlap. So I think that is another commitment we're making. We are investing $15 million in the California Mobility Center, and I want to thank Sac State for its incredible partnership in moving that forward. This is a really important effort which will accelerate the decarbonization of new mobility solutions. And importantly, there's a jobs component that is being, and workforce development, which is being specifically structured to create training opportunities among our disadvantaged communities. So I'm very excited about that and continue to work hard on moving that forward. While we have a very ambitious plan to decarbonize, there's always more to do. Our current commitments are based on a plan that was adopted in 2018. Next year, we began planning anew to look at how do we even accelerate faster than we have? How do we enhance and deepen our commitments? So we're not going, none of us are going to do this alone. It is only going to be through partnerships with the city and all of you, and SMUD stands ready to be an active partner with each and every one of you as we all work towards a low carbon future. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Arlen. It's been great working with you. And thank you for all the commitments in SMUD's leadership. And as we've heard today, everyone will still be pushing you along. Commissioner Littman and then Arnold.
So as an advocacy group, 350 Sacramento isn't going to put a lot of money into anything, but we have a different job to do. We're going to participate as a community in the climate action plans to make it as robust as possible. We're going to continue to push for an accelerated timeline for implementation of the Commission recommendations, because we know that the majority of actions have to be completed by 2030. We're going to organize events and educate people and bring people into this movement for climate justice, and do a lot more with the justice side of climate justice. And we're going to hold our decision makers responsible for creating a rapid and just transition to carbon zero. And we're going to focus on the 2030 target rather than the 2045 that we're not sure we can make. We've got to do it by 2030. So we're going to be pushing in every way possible to get these recommendations to be implemented quickly, justly, and with great ambition. I don't see this report as highly ambitious, because it's hard to imagine the world that we need to create, or the community we need to create. But we need to use our imaginations and start to be better than we think we can be. So thank you all for involving me in this commission. We've learned a lot as an organization, and I have personally benefited a lot from it. And I hope we can give back to the community by making us carbon zero really quickly.
Thanks, Lori. Commissioner Arnold.
Thank you, Chair. And I will say it is also hard to follow Lori Lippman, as well as April Wick in remarks. Appreciate the opportunity to share some of Valley Vision's commitments. I absolutely appreciate the opportunity to have participated in this commission, and really thank the mayors and you, Anne, for their leadership throughout the process. So as I think, Anne, you mentioned in your opening to this part of the agenda, partnerships are going to be key across public, private, nonprofit, et cetera. And partnerships are a thing that Valley Vision is a really strong believer in, again, across all of those sectors. And we'll continue to work in that way in this area as we go forward. A couple of the specific things that we are pleased to be able to commit to is, or I guess are, that we will support and advocate for the recommended strategies in the report across all of the sectors, as well as for the year one projects. These are consistent with and will be explicitly embedded into work that we already have underway from an advocacy perspective. We also are very active in regional air quality through the Region's Cleaner Air Partnership, which we manage and are a founding partner of, and will continue to coordinate efforts to influence state and federal policy from an air quality and a public health aspect, which does include an overlay into greenhouse gas emissions and climate action. A new body of work that we have committed to do is going to be funded by the Air Resources Board to facilitate community-led air monitoring in high pollution burden neighborhoods in Sacramento, and to helping those neighborhoods and communities identify tools to address the needs that the air quality related needs that they identify as part of this work. As I said, that's work that's just getting underway. And the last thing that I'd like to mention is that we will continue to be active participants in both regional and statewide climate adaptation work in anticipation of the changes to our climate that are already underway. Although this work is less directly connected to the Commission's focus on mitigation, it absolutely shares the founding principles of the Commission of urgency, advocacy, accountability, education, and financial and economic sustainability. And I'd like to wrap up this short list of Valley Vision's commitments with an invitation to all of the commissioners to, in the aftermath and the winding down of the commission activity, to join the Regional Climate Adaptation Network, which is called the Capital Region Climate Readiness Collaborative, which is a lot of C's and R's, which is not just a Sacramento and West Sacramento, but a 6-county region-wide partnership and ongoing collaboration. We just welcomed Placer County, for example, as a member this afternoon. And conveniently and coincidentally, this isn't the convenient part, I happen to serve as chair. The convenient and coincidental part is that Julia Kim, who has so ably staffed this commission, also staffs CRC, and we have LGC's support for that. So I would really encourage you to consider that participation as a way of continuing engagement on these types of topics. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meg. All right. Commissioner Rodriguez, Mohana, Corliss, and Weiser all have their hands up, so we'll start with you, Trish.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Stosswell, and honorable mayors and fellow commissioners. It really has been an honor to serve with you. I've certainly learned a lot about the heights that our city and region needs to achieve and how we can support that. Kaiser Permanente is very proud to support the Mayor's Commission on Climate Change recommendations on achieving carbon zero in Sacramento, West Sacramento by 2045. As the largest not-for-profit integrated healthcare system in the United States, we understand the link between climate health and human health. And our mission is to improve the health of our members and the communities that we serve. And we understand that taking bold steps to reduce our climate impact while advocating for broader recognition of climate health is an important connection. In 2020, we became carbon neutral as an organization, completing the last mile toward this milestone through investment in carefully chosen carbon offset projects. By eliminating our carbon footprint, we've taken measurable action to improve conditions that lead to poor health, increased rates of asthma and other respiratory conditions, spread of infectious disease, heat-related illness, and physical and psychological injuries from severe weather events such as wildfires. Earlier this year, Kaiser Permanente met our long-stated goal of becoming carbon neutral across our operations in accordance with carbon neutral protocol. By financing emission reduction projects, we are supporting a transition to a low-carbon global economy, which will enable us to have a healthier planet and, in turn, healthier lives. We have approached this neutrality by, from several directions, purchasing our utility-scale electricity from renewable resources, more than 360 megawatts, installing 44 megawatts of on-solar arrays, enough to power 9,600 homes for a year, and improving energy efficiency in our building, and then by purchasing carefully selected carbon offsets. Here in the greater Sacramento area, we've installed solar panels in parking lots, not only here, but in all of our major medical offices and hospitals across the greater Sacramento area. And they are providing a significant amount of energy to lower our power needs. And it not only has had impact to our facilities, but locally, including generating a portion of the facility's total electricity demands. It also provides great shades. I'm parked under one of them now. It's especially great on hot days. After taking many steps as possible, we are using carbon offsets to go the final mile. And we purchased approximately 380,000 tons of offsets. While some of our sustainable practices require upfront investments, we project that over a long time, our cost saving or will be cost saving or cost neutral for Kaiser Permanente. This includes long-term contracts to purchase renewable energy. We are proud to have been the first healthcare organization in the nation to begin closely monitoring and publicly reporting our greenhouse gas emissions, beginning in our California regions in 2005. Climate change is consistent with Kaiser Permanente's focus on preventing illness and safeguarding people's health, and we will work to protect against climate change, and it is embedded in our operations. It really is in how we manage our buildings, purchase food, medical equipment, supplies, really serve our members, as well as how we consume energy and process waste. To this end, we feel we have a great responsibility to support health at every opportunity and are committed to building partnerships that work towards community health. Thank you.
Thank you, Trish, and thank you to Kaiser for all the work on sustainability. All right, Commissioner Mohana, you're up.
Firstly, I just want to thank all of our fellow commissioners, especially Anne and LGC, Kate at LGC and Julia, for the amazing work that's been done here. I think, you know, it's really, we have to understand that getting a unanimous vote on this report was very challenging. And the fact that we were able to do that is a true testament to our region and what we are capable of doing in the future. So I just want to personally commit that, you know, through our discussions, I'm going to continue to push the traditional boundaries in development, because it really is inspiring to see the transformation of lives that occur just through the way that people live, and seeing over 50% of our residents have the capability of living car-free and walking and biking to work is really what our vision is about. And, you know, I want to commit that the next project that I do will, you know, incorporate all electric in addition to the equity pieces that we're talking about. So, you know, I want to commit that what we are going to build next, which will include efficiency units for people experiencing homelessness, will not only integrate the equity pieces, but we'll also integrate the innovation in construction, design, and technology that we need to see to bring that affordability for our populations, and at the same time showcasing what we are capable of here in Sacramento. So I want to commit to that, and I want to thank the commissioners for pushing us and making us be more creative and innovative, because as you stated, you know, time is of the essence and we are facing many challenges in all sectors. Affordability and environmental sustainability have to be interlinked if we really want to see real solutions. So thank you all for all of the good work that you've done.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Nikki. Commissioner Corliss and then Weiser.
Thanks, Chair Stossball. I first just want to say, and I think Commissioner Hanson referenced this earlier, I want to thank all the people that flooded my email inbox over the last couple of weeks. I mean, in a time when I'm looking for any kind of glimmer of hope, they were not form emails. I read them. I didn't respond to all of them, but I read them. I want you to know, if you're listening tonight, it makes a difference. It really does. And I feel like glimmers of hope. The future is in good hands with people like you, and we need you to continue to really push. Those are inspirational emails, and so thank you for all of you that showed you care about the future, because we have no choice. We've got a letter, and you had it in your inbox. We got it just in time delivery. That's what we specialize in. It came in at, I don't know, 4:10 p.m. and that's outlines the commitments that we would make. But let me tell you what I would like to have happen that I can't commit to tonight because I've got a 32-member board. But what I'd like to have happen, I'd like us as a region, so much of what we have talked about, and I know a lot of it is in our hands, but some of it's not. And part of it is we must have a much stronger voice in the state capitol. We need assistance at the state level and the federal level, and we need to be, I think, a model where innovative transportation, housing, and equity overlap. I think we can be the region that is the model. This, I think, vote and this report tonight shows that. It shows a path forward. But we've got to basically tell our story better, and we have to get the attention of the folks that are the decision makers at the state level in particular. And then secondly, I want to reach down. I've been inspired by many of you who have talked so passionately about the equity implications and the importance for so many communities that aren't a part of this right now and that don't necessarily have a voice in many of these things. So just take transportation as an example. I would like your help to figure out how we could get, through our funds that we control and other funds, resources into communities, disadvantaged communities, communities of color, to design their own transportation solutions. From the bottom up, part of this test bed could be that we are actually trying to figure out how we can, and it started. I want to give Henry Lee and others a lot of credit. We've got some of the smart shuttles and smart rides running around places in South Sacramento, but in Via and West Sac, there's much more we could do, and we could do it kind of from the bottom up. I think a community-based program that actually identifies projects, scopes them, gets them ready so that when we have funding, people are actually coming forward from communities of color and low-income communities saying, here's what we need. It's all ready to go. Because right now I don't have that from enough places. So that's my aspiration, and I can commit that I will try. And thanks for all of you and for all of your hard work, and thank you, Anne, for chairing this so effectively.
Thanks, James. And just so everyone knows, the SACOG commitment letter is up on the website with the others. Mackenzie.
So I hate to be last, but here we go. James, you stole the words right out of my mouth, because I thought we would be remiss if we did not talk about all of those committed folks out there who took the time to write us. And I agree, they were not form letters. I read them all and actually did respond to all of them. So thank you for sending us letters. But I also wanted to thank Kate and Julia for all the coordination and communication. I wanted to thank the chair and honorable mayors for the efforts that you put forth to make this commission so successful. I wanted to thank all of the commissioners for the relationships we've formed over the last 18 months and all that I've learned from you. And I wanted to thank all of you for allowing me to provide a regional perspective from Elk Grove on this commission. I'm committed as a representative from Elk Grove to doing all within my power to ensure that Elk Grove begins to step up and meets these recommendations. As we all know, politics are a little bit different down here, but I'm really willing to step forward and step out to make sure that we step up here in Elk Grove. And as the CEO of one of many environmental education nonprofits, I want you all to know that I'm committed to ensuring that our youth continue to feel connected to nature and that they feel committed to climate action and preservation of the natural world. So thank you all for this experience. It's been extremely amazing. Your friendships are rewarding, and I will continue to use my voice to step forward.
Thank you. Thank you all for your beautiful comments and the commitments. It's really the end of our work. It is true that when we started, I think we said, yeah, it's a 6-month project. And I remember calling a few people and saying it'll just be a few meetings and there won't be that much work in between. But the task and the challenge demanded much more than that. So thank you all for hanging in there and for all the work and passion you put into it. It's really been amazing to get to know all of you. I had never worked at the local level before. I've learned a lot. It's been an amazing experience. The commitment and passion that you all have brought to this is inspiring, and it gives me hope that we can get this done. I want to thank the mayors, of course, for founding and launching this initiative, and the commission, and our funders who made the work possible. Thank you. They provided the funding to enable us to hire the local government commission, who we couldn't have done this without. I want to thank the TAC leaders. I hope some of you are still on, for bringing your TAC work groups together, and all the members of the TACs for the countless hours of meetings and phone calls and commenting and wordsmithing. And it feels like a long time ago that we saw those presentations, but they were all outstanding and resulted in our recommendations. I want to thank the Youth Summit organizers. You know, Rachel and Moise, who organized the Youth Summits, just won a national award. I don't remember the name of it, but that was pretty impressive. And they brought hundreds of youths to this initiative and their voices. I want to thank the staff from the cities, both the internal city staff and Julia Burrows and David Tilley from the mayor's office, who supported the effort. We've had weekly and bi-weekly calls throughout this process, and they've been there every step of the way. And I want to thank the Metro Chamber for hosting the business roundtables, and I want to thank you guys for your candor. It's not always easy to be the ones to deliver the tough message to a group. So thank you for that. And I want to thank all the public members who engaged through comments, coming to our meetings, keeping on pushing us. I also read all the letters. I wish I could answer them. They were very, very powerful. I feel like they need to be documented somewhere. They were beautiful. Poetry. I don't even know how to thank Kate and Julia. Kate, you both of you, but I'll speak to it separately. Kate, you're so brilliant. You're so passionate about the issues. You know so much about this, and I hope that you'll be able to stay involved in moving this forward. And you know, we just couldn't have done this without you. Your writing is great. Your thoughts are great. And it's just been really a pleasure to get to know you and work with you. And Julia, Kim, the same to you. Just the amount of hours that you've spent organizing us, writing documents, revising documents, and logistics. You're so efficient and so committed. Thank you so much. And I also want to thank Jen Gress. I know she was going to be on. I don't know if she still is. Jen was the former Julia Burrows, I guess, at the mayor's office, if you will. She's now at CARB. And Jen and I worked together on, you know, putting this together once the mayor's asked us to. And I hope you feel proud today, Jen. So we will tomorrow immediately be submitting the report to the mayors. I'm so proud that we'll be doing that. We'll be submitting it along with the technical report that LGC prepared, which is also an outstanding body of work. Robert Nelson said we could take a breath, so I guess we can do that tonight. But as everyone has said, there really is no time to waste in moving forward with this. So thank you all for the commitment you've expressed today on keeping the momentum and collaboration going. And to all the public members and the advocates on the phone or on the webinar, please continue to push and advocate for our cities and regional area to be sustainable. So with that, I just say it's been an honor to work with you all. Such a pleasure. And I hope to see you all soon. And that concludes our final meeting of the Mayor's Climate Commission. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Ann.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Sure.
See you all soon.